What's up, Raptors fans? Welcome to the Watch Report. I have a special guest with me today. I know you know who this is, Jacob from Amateur Hour Sports. Jacob, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, I'm happy to be here, man. Thanks for setting this up, getting us together again.
Absolutely. So for today's video, guys, we will be talking about which direction the Raptors should go in for this offseason. But before we get into all of that fun stuff, I'm sure all of you guys are subscribed to Amateur Hour Sports, but if you are not, he makes some amazing Raptors content. Go over to this channel, hit that subscribe button as well, and give this video a thumbs up. So let's get right into it, Jacob. So which direction do you think the Raptors should go into heading into the offseason?
So I think it was pretty clear from Masai Ujiri's press conference from Wednesday that um, the Raptors want to be back into a contending position as soon as possible. And whether that happens next season or the season after or the season after that, if Masai Ujiri does return and you and me are both kind of growing a little bit more positive about him returning, we think it's going to happen. Whatever happens in the offseason, it's either laying the foundation to become a contender again or it is making the moves to be a contender next season. But whatever it is, this franchise wants to start winning games again. This was disaster of a season, as we've said, and they're looking to rectify that as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. It's funny because we've been hearing all sorts of funny takes by fans suggesting that we should build around OG Anunoby, Gary Trent, and trade Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam away. But that's not happening, guys. I mean, they're still fairly young by NBA terms, and they're still going to improve. They may not have huge jumps like they did the last couple seasons, but they'll improve their game. We've seen that with DeMar DeRozan, improving little parts of their game. So I think they're definitely part of our future. As you've mentioned, Masai Ujiri is a big part of our championship run, and he wants to bring another championship to the Raptors. Now, I have a question for you. Where does Gary Trent and Kyle Lowry fit into the Raptors system, our Raptors team, our roster heading forward? Do we potentially sign and trade Gary Trent Jr.? Because if we do sign him, and he's rumored to, and he's probably going to get anywhere from $16 to $20 million. We're going to have a lot of money tied up in our four guys in OG, Fred, Pascal, and then Gary Trent. And where does that leave us for our center position? So
I think that I'll start with Gary Trent. Bit of a loaded question when it comes to Kyle Lowry. So let me address Gary Trent here. I think that the Raptors, having made the trade, trading Norman Powell, are committed to whatever offer sheet comes Gary Trent's way. He's restricted free agent. They're going to match that offer sheet. It looks really bad in the franchise if he doesn't return, unless it's something crazy, some crazy amounts of money. I think as long as it's under $20 million, I know that's expensive. The Raptors are probably going to match that. I would assume Gary Trent's going to get around $16 to $17 million as a restricted free agent. And I think that is okay for me to bring him back. And also, it just leaves you flexibility to trade him if you have to. Losing him for free would kind of be a bit of a disaster for a Raptors team who doesn't really have a great bench yet. I think Gary Trent kind of looks like he's going to be a good bench piece for next season, if not a starting shooting guard. So Gary Trent, absolutely bring this guy back, even if it is just to have the asset for future trade considerations. And if you want to weigh in on Gary Trent before we move on to Kyle Lowry's situation.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you. I don't think you trade Gary Trent Jr. unless a crazy offer comes your way. And even that, I don't see that happening because Gary Trent, he's 22 years old. I mean, people tend to forget that. The guy's had, 3 years of experience or whatever he has in the NBA. He's learned from the best, Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum. So he's got that clutch gene. We've seen him hit that game-winning shot. And you know what? He's as old. Actually, Malachi Flynn just turned 23, I believe, last week. So he's younger than our first-round draft pick. So 22 years old is usually players we draft in our, usually the age we draft those guys at. So I don't think you trade him, especially with this guy who has so much potential in the NBA. He likes the Raptors system. Obviously, we like him too. So I think definitely pay him as long as it's at a reasonable amount. I don't think he'll command too much money, anywhere around the 16 to 17, 18, and have a similar deal to how Fred VanVleet have and increase his salary year by year. So definitely, I agree with you there.
Yeah, backloaded contract for Gary, kind of hoping that he starts to improve. And again, just having the asset leaves you with the opportunity to trade him as you progress. And like you said, 22 years old. If you look at Norman Powell at 22 years old, who they're forever going to be compared. They got traded for each other. Look at Norman Powell at 22 years old. Look at Gary Trent at 22 years old. Gary Trent is miles better than what Norman Powell was. So we can work with this guy. I think that there's a lot of great things about his game. Shot selection is one of his deficiencies, but that's something that's just very easy to work on. Raptors development team. They've had so much success in the last decade or so. They're going to get it right. The shot selection will get tinkered. His defense, I think, is solid as well. And I think that once he's in a better winning culture here, he's already bought into the city, Toronto, even though he's never really been there as a Raptor. He's already bought into the city. That's something the fans love. Just guys who embody the franchise and can represent the franchise. That's what we want. And Gary Trent ticks all those boxes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. He's I know we keep having this debate of between a lot of fans about, well, Norman Powell's playing great with the Portland Trail Blazers, but guys, let's be honest. If Norman Powell walked this season, that would have been what, 3 or 4 seasons in a row we've let key free agents walk. And with that trade, it gave us flexibility to match any offer. So even if, let's say, we overpay Gary Trent Jr., as you've mentioned, he's an asset you can trade. You don't have a lot of 22-year-olds that have the impact that he's having in the NBA. His confidence, you love it. His swagger. We've seen his we've seen his clothes on the sidelines. He brings a
The
lot of style.
fits
He
a little bit questionable.
I like it. I like his style. He brings a lot of swagger to the Raptors, and you know what? He seems like he's getting it along with OG Anunoby as well. So let's move on to Kyle Lowry. How does he fit in the Raptors organization? We know he's talked about wanting to win another championship, and does he fit? Do we re-sign him? Do we re-sign him, or do we sign and trade him?
It really, really depends on the next few weeks because obviously the draft will happen a couple days before free agency. I think that Masai, if he's looking at this team like they can go win a championship next season, which probably a bit far-fetched, but if Masai's looking at this and it's like this team can challenge for a championship next season, you bring back Kyle Lowry. You want that leader. You want that championship DNA. You want that experience. You want that clutch factor. Kyle Lowry is very good in clutch situations, specifically in the playoffs. The statistics will showcase it. And the Raptors last season were the second best clutch team in the NBA. And the reason for that was because Kyle Lowry ran the offense and he knows how to exploit mismatches. He knows how to find like the best shot available. If it's not for him, he knows where the best shot available is. So if that's for Van Vliet, if that's for Siakam, if that's for OG, he is going to find it. Let's just think about the game three shot or game three. OG Anunoby hits the shot over Jaylen Brown. 0.4 seconds to go. How does Kyle Lowry think of that? There's no way that's the initial play, but Kyle Lowry has the sense in those situations to find again the best matchup, the best shot. OG with the best shot. Hauls it
And
over
or
like
Taco Fall.
8 foot tall Taco Fall. So I think if championship is a thing next season, bring back Kyle Lowry. I personally don't think we're going to be there. I think I think a sign and trade would be the best maneuver for Kyle Lowry. And there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with that, but I've said a lot on my channel. I think the best thing is to sign and trade Kyle Lowry at the in free agency. What do you think?
I agree. I agree with all of those things you've mentioned, but I think it's time to give Fred VanVleet the keys to the main point guard position. We've known they've played well over the last couple of seasons, but it's become evident this season, particularly Kyle Lowry. He's a great player, but he's definitely slowed down. Now, if we're going for a championship, I think you have to bring him back. Obviously, you would have to bring him with a reduced role. I don't think you could have him starting again just because you want to like guys like it wouldn't make sense to re-sign Gary Trent Jr. just to have him on the bench. Let those guys be the starting position. Let Kyle Lowry kind of run a similar role to how Serge Ibaka was on our championship run. Let him run with that second unit. We know Kyle Lowry's great at getting other guys involved. So I think if we're going for a championship run, absolutely bring him back. Obviously, not pay him a lot of money as well. I don't think I'm paying him over
That's
15,
the
16.
problem.
That's the issue to the salary cap.
Because you gotta pay Gary Trent. Not a lot of room to pay Kyle Lowry as well. And I think Gary Trent's going to be the bigger priority.
Absolutely. I agree. So I think the most attractive situation for the Raptors fans and Raptors organizations to sign and trade. And I've mentioned this in other videos as well. Unfortunately, with sign and trades, you're not going to be getting the same pieces back as you would at, like, let's say, a trade deadline. So we may have to settle with less, but there's definitely pieces we can acquire in a Kyle Lowry sign and trade. So
Yeah, definitely agree. I think Kyle Lowry is going to want about $25 million. He's made it. There's kind of three things he's looking for. He made that clear in his Wednesday press conference. He wants money, first of all, wants to take care of his family for generations. He wants to win, and he likes loyalty. So I think if Masai comes back, he can prove that they want to be a winning franchise. I think Kyle Lowry may take a pay cut, but Again, money's going to be a concern. I feel like he's going to want around $25 million. And if we want him in the role, as you mentioned, kind of coming up the bench running the second unit,
That's too much.
$25
That is
million
way too
for
much.
that is a little too much. And why the sign and trade kind of works here is Raptors have his bird rights, which means that they can go over the cap to sign him. So bird rights will probably be really good for a sign and trade, and that will help for a team who, let's say
Like
Miami will probably be interested in him. They
76ers
may
too.
look at that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
they may look at that the bird rights as, okay, sign and trade might make a little bit more sense. We go over the cap for him. We keep a lot of our core pieces in place, and I think there are some decent packages that Miami or Philly can offer us in the sign and trade. Obviously, you won't get the value, like you said, of Kyle Lowry, and a really good kind of precedent is when Jimmy Butler left Philly, sign and trade to Miami. Miami clearly okay with sign and trade maneuvers. Philly got Josh Richardson in return. He's not the best, but it's
Mhm.
not a bad role player, and it's better than getting nothing, right?
Absolutely. You know what? I was actually just thinking of that earlier too. When the 76ers traded Miami, or sorry, excuse me, Jimmy Butler to the Miami Heat, it wasn't a great package, but at the end of the day, with the Raptors team that they have right now, I think you try to acquire young pieces just so if you do decide to go for that one star player you want to try and trade for, you have a lot of young players and young pieces you can throw in a trade and try to acquire some of those pieces. So I think for this trade in a sign and trade, you're not necessarily trying to, obviously it'd be ideal if you could acquire a center, but you can always try to acquire young pieces that you can use in a future trade, or if you want to keep them, you keep them. So you have a lot of options moving forward as well. So
Yeah, just holding those assets, sign and trading Kyle Lowry just gives you something to work with for the future. And I think giving them away for nothing would be a little bit disastrous. You were talking about Norm earlier. Like from the Raptors championship team, there's four key pieces. That's all that are already left for nothing.
mhm.
Kawhi, Danny Green, which we were kind of expecting, but Gasol and Ibaka as well. Key pieces to that championship team who walk away for nothing. It would really pain me to see another one, Kyle Lowry, go away for nothing. And that's why I was so keen on trading him at the deadline. Didn't
Mhm.
materialize. So I think a lot of work to be done for the Kyle Lowry situation. I really don't know. I have no idea what the motive is here for the franchise. There's so many ways you can go about this.
Definitely, I agree, and it's also to note that not a lot of contending teams will have salary cap outside of maybe Miami and New York. So that definitely helps the Raptors too, because there's going to be a lot of teams asking about Kyle Lowry in the offseason. So it gives us many options and many teams that will look at him. So with that being said, let's move on to our next topic, the bench. What do we do with the bench in the offseason? We know that's been a big issue. Now, obviously, we have guys like Aaron Baines. We have to decline his contract. Rodney Hood as well. Now, we need to retool our bench as well because clearly we saw that was a big issue with the Raptors. The scoring
Yeah.
definitely needs. We need a boost from this bench. So, what do you do? What do you think we do with the bench? Who do you get rid of? Who do you keep?
So I think there needs to be a pretty big overhaul. I feel like at the start of the season, the Raptors had 20 NBA ready players. The problem was a lot of those were bottom tier NBA players. So there's a lot
Mhm.
of, I guess, mediocrity on the bench. And we kind of saw that over the course of the season. I think that from the bench, the guys who have really made it seem like they got to be back next season, I think Boucher for sure. He's on a contract anyway, so that's fine. Um, I think Utah has absolutely earned a role on this team for next season, whether that be like a ninth man or 10, 11, 12. I think he's earned himself a spot on this team. And other than that, I feel like there's no definitive, like, have any of the other guys made it like you got to bring me back? I think
Mhm.
Gillespie is a good pickup. I think bringing him back is smart. But like looking at Bembry, Stanley Johnson, Aaron Baines, Rodney Hood. Have any of them done enough to force the Raptors to bring them back?
Absolutely not. I have to agree with you, and we've actually both mentioned this in our individual videos as well. You've mentioned how we have too many NBA ready players, and I've mentioned this in my previous couple videos where I feel like with the Raptors, they got too many of those guys, and they didn't define a role and give our bench
Right,
pieces consistent minutes because we saw that
right,
with DeAndre Bembry, he'd play 5 games, and we wouldn't see him again for another, several games. So that didn't help our bench
right.
players as well. But I definitely think you need to get rid of those guys. But here's a question for you, Jacob. Aaron Baines, we know he has a player option. I believe Rodney Hood it does as well. Do you accept those
They're
player
team
options?
options, team options.
Excuse me, sorry, team options, not player options. Do you accept those team options and include them in a trade? because they do make
No,
combined
okay, man. Rodney Hood's 10 million. Aaron Baines is, I believe,
seven
7.4. Those
17 million.
are unattractive
Do
contracts.
you accept them and trade them right away? I don't know if there's a rule. I'm not sure if you know, but I'm not aware of any
Um,
rule that prohibits teams from accepting player option and then or team
I
options.
don't know. I don't know if there is. I'm not quite familiar with that. Regardless, whether there is a rule or not, those are two unattractive contracts. I would say just wipe your hands clean. Thank you, but no thank you.
Thank you,
We're
Aaron
gonna move
Baines, for a
on.
high draft pick.
Thank you, but we are going to go in a different direction. Out of those guys I listed, I think Bembry for 1.9 million, that's his team option. I think he's done enough to warrant the Raptors taking that. That's very cheap.
Mhm.
I think that's when I would exercise. Stanley Johnson's a free agent.
Yeah,
If he's not getting the minimum, I don't see a ton that he brings. But no, Hood 10 million, Aaron Baines 7.4. Those are just,
I
you
agree.
don't want those hanging over your head.
No, definitely not.
So bench like Boucher, a great sixth man. I think Malachi Flynn is like your seventh man is pretty good.
Mhm.
Uh, Again, there's gonna be a lot of question marks about like seventh and eighth and ninth man. Like who is gonna be getting us the points off the bench? Because as good as Malachi Flynn is, it's not gonna be him.
Mhm.
And as much as I like Utah, it's not gonna be him either. So we need to get some scoring off the bench. That's for sure.
I agree. I think we need to bring. No, I've been thinking about this lately. I wouldn't want to necessarily bring Lou Will back, but someone like a player like Lou Will that can come in and score buckets.
Style.
Not necessarily Lou Will because we know he's been here. We didn't re-sign him, and he felt some sort of way. He's let the radio stations know that as well, and but I think someone
He's also a
definitely.
bit washed.
Yeah, yeah, and I think at this point of his career, he wants to be on a contending team, but definitely not Lou Will, but someone who can come in right away and get us some buckets. As you mentioned, Utah is a great player, but I don't know if he's a bucket getter right off the bat. He has stretches of where he shoots really well and then he struggles. So I think definitely that's one issue we need to address. Another, a lot of people don't realize it, is we need some veteran leadership off the bench. We've lost Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, and we know how big they were
True.
in helping guys like I know Terrence Davis didn't work out, but you saw the difference in those 2 seasons when Serge Ibaka was here. He's mentioned that in interviews as well. He's
Yeah.
definitely helped Terrence Davis a lot in his developmental. So we lost Serge Ibaka. We've seen what that does. So I think definitely having some veteran key players, even if they're not getting minutes, just be a good locker room presence to help the Raptors young players score and just provide some leadership as well.
Yeah, and these are things that you're going to have to address in free agency. And again, we've alluded to the fact that there isn't enough talent on the bench, so you got to bring in that veteran guy, but also you can't like compromise the talent there. You need to have talent coming off the bench. I think the draft is really going to help with that. I think Raptors probably go for a shooting guard, so either he slots to the starting lineup, Gary Trent's on the bench, or the draft picks on the bench, even if it's not a shooting guard. Draft pick on the bench, I think that will help. I think that we really need a guy who can get buckets. I think that will be a bit of the focus in the draft. If not, um, it is the biggest probably concern for this Raptors team. I'm happy with the main core.
Mhm.
Big concern is what the bench is going to look like. Can we kind of get back to that sort of bench mob vibe that we had, like 5 years ago? And if we don't, then uh, you can't rely on Siakam and Van Vliet to get like 40 minutes a game and be effective for 82 games.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? You can't keep playing starters heavy minutes as well. They wear down. And we've seen with injuries too, they happen, especially the way
Yep.
Fred Van Vliet in particular plays. You see him play great defense and then just really get up there on the offense as well. So it leads to
Yep.
injuries. I think you need to reduce their minutes, save them a little bit for the playoffs as well next season. So those are definitely some issues we address now. Is there any scenario, Jacob, you would trade maybe a Fred Van Vliet or Pascal? Let's say we don't land the number one overall draft pick. And you know what? Maybe Messiah or whoever comes in decides, you know what, I want to rebuild completely. Is there any scenario in which you would trade Pascal for, let's say, a number one pick or Fred Van Vliet for a
So,
top four pick or something?
so let's talk about the core, the three guys. So OG, Siakam, Van Vliet. OG is pretty much off limits for me. Nobody's off limits if you get a good enough offer,
Yeah.
but pretty much you can call OG off limits. I would
Mhm.
also clump Siakam into that. I think that Siakam complements a ball handler really well. And unfortunately, Fred Van Vliet is probably the easiest guy to trade. Um, that kind of player, I think that teams will find that attractive. I think that the contract teams will find that attractive. So I think that if this team wants to be a champion, Siakam needs to be on this team. And I've been saying that we either need to get somebody who's like just as good as him or better than him. And who better to complement a ball handling guard than like a slashing beast like Siakam, who can like imagine getting like let's speculate Bradley Beal,
Yeah.
and probably not going to happen, but Bradley Beal, a type player like that, that's a pure scorer, ball handler who can run a pick and roll with Pascal Siakam. That's going to be absolutely deadly. And that is why I think that Siakam needs to be a part of this future. If we want to win a championship, I think Siakam plays a key role in doing that. As much as people criticize this season, like 21 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, 4 assists per game on 45% shooting is nothing to be ashamed of.
No,
Still a very
absolutely.
good player.
I agree. I agree. And you know what? He does so many little things on defense as well. People don't realize it's those analytics and, steals,
Big
blocks.
time.
He does every little thing. So I think I agree with you. If we're going for a championship run, I don't think you trade Pascal Siakam. He's probably arguably one of the better number 2 options in the NBA outside of maybe, like the Brooklyn Nets. They have too many options, or other teams as well. But I agree. You know what? I think he complements someone really well like Bradley Beal if we're able to get him. But we have to keep him because outside of Pascal Siakam, as good as OG and Fred have been, they can't be consistently the number 2 option on a championship team. I think without a doubt, they're best number 3 option. OG's still working on his game, so we'll see. Maybe he surprises us next season. But I'd have to agree with you there. Pascal has to stay if we're going for a championship run. So any last thoughts, Jacob, before we end this video?
I think, put your faith in the front office. They've done us right for, better part of a decade. Put your faith in them. Whatever we get as far as the lottery goes, I think that we're going to get a piece that is really going to help this team. And with the core of OG, Siakam, and Van Vliet in place, I think the future is absolutely bright. And if Masai stays, it's even brighter. So don't get too worked up about this season. There are better days ahead for Toronto Raptors fans.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I mean, look at what, Boston Celtics are going through. They're going to be facing the Nets in the first round and they're going to lose. I
Yep.
mean, you saw what happened with the Hornets, and Masai Ujiri said it too. We're not in this play and whatever crap, we're here to win a championship. So Raptors fans, as Jacob said, be patient. It was a developmental year anyways. Now we get a high draft pick to add to our core. So
Yeah.
a lot of bright things to look forward to next season and the future. So that'll be it for this video, guys. Thank you. And again, if you have not checked out Jacob from Amateur Hour Sports, I will leave the link in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe to his channel. Make sure to subscribe to mine if you have not. Give this video thumbs up. And thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Until next time.